are you today? So glad to see you. We had a little bit of trouble yesterday. We've worked around it. We've got a make do set up, and the Lord's going to help us. We're going to have a great time today. Got lots of information for you. Made me feel a little bit better when Facebook had some trouble today because everybody's got problems sometimes. Is podcasting on your horizon? My guest today, author, speaker, and now podcaster, Michelle Rayburn, will give us the lowdown on podcasting. Hi, I'm Patricia Durkin, and this is Marketers on a Mission. We present marketing, tutorials, and interviews by and for Christian writers, speakers, and artists. This is episode number 177. Could 2019 be the year you launch your podcast? With my guest, Michelle Rayburn. Hello, Michelle. How are you?
Oh, good afternoon.
It's good to see you today. Appreciate you taking the time.
Yes. It's snowing here in Wisconsin.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
At what level is it at right now?
Just a few flurries.
Everybody's, for us, that would be, closing schools, no milk, no bread, no tissue paper in the stores. It goes pretty crazy around here. And we've already talked, and I'm going to have later, I'm going to put our original interview link above and this link after this episode airs. But today we're talking exclusively about podcasting, and most recently yours. How old is yours now?
I launched it in September.
So
2 months.
2 months.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And it's already going gangbusters because everything that you do seems like you may have a different story from your viewpoint, but from our viewpoint, everything that you do succeeds and very well. So
thank you. It takes a little while before you start to see some metrics coming through where you can see, how many followers you have because it's on multiple platforms. So it just takes a while for the analytics to catch up and see where it's at.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things we'll talk about later is there's multiple platforms, isn't it?
Right.
Okay. It's really important to get the most bang for every minute that you spend, that you invest in your business, right?
Absolutely. So when I thought about launching a podcast, I had to make sure it fit with what I was already doing and make sure it wasn't going to be just one more thing that I was doing. It really had to be something for me that I could reach my audience in another way, but not have to completely reinvent content. It goes along with my blog, it goes along with my book, it goes along with the speaking I do. So that was important for me.
And this seems like such an overwhelming, when somebody hears that, they're like, I don't know how to do that. But really, just think about it. Just think about it. You do know how to do this. You're just taking another aspect of it and give us an overview of how someone would do this. Because I have my own opinion, but you're the guest today.
Sure. So, actually, there are multiple ways of doing it. So it's important if you're thinking about doing a podcast to go out there and read some articles on how to launch one, because I took the advice from quite a few different ones and merged it into something that I thought could work for me. So there's so much advice, and it depends on whether you're looking at the business world or the writing world, or celebrities have their own version of podcasting. Mm-hmm. So getting it started for me was trying to figure out, how am I going to launch this? How am I going to record it? Who's going to care about the content? And so when getting started, I had to decide even on a format. Do I want it to be just me talking? Do I want to do like you're doing with Marketers on a Mission and interview people? Do I want it to be even reading some of my book content? That's what some people do in their podcast. So that was the first step, was deciding why I was doing it.
Mm-hmm. Janelle Wood is here. She's already joined us. We have some others who are at present incognito. Always glad to see you. Thanks for joining us. You'll be talking about, in this episode, we're going to talk about the process of launching and producing. Now, this is not technical information. There's lots of technical information, but that's not today's at all. We have to before we even get to the tech stuff, we have to get the strategy down and understand our goals, and part of which you just talked about, right?
Right. I had to decide on the why, and I listen to a lot of podcasts. To me, the goal is to get content to people who are too busy to read books and who really don't slow down. So for me, I listen to podcasts in the car. I listen when I'm out on a walk, and it's a way of consuming all kinds of information where I don't have to be looking at a screen and I don't have to be reading pages. I can be listening. So that's part of what I do. I also have a video avenue of the podcast because there are some people who like the video. But essentially what I'm doing is taking my videos and taking the audio off them, and that is the podcast. And so when I record, I know that it is also going to be for people who are only listening. And so I always have that in mind when I'm recording.
Yes, yes, yes. I've considered doing the same thing with mine, but some of the, like the tutorials, they're not going to transfer. So then that makes me, my first question that comes up immediately is, what about my numerical system? It's going to mess up my numerical system. I can't, maybe you could give me some insight on that sometime.
Yeah, actually, there might be other people right now listening who have that same question. So for me, it's that I'm numbering my blogs and I'm numbering the podcast and the YouTube videos all with the exact same episode or issue number. And so essentially the blog becomes the show notes. If you're a person who listens to podcasts often, you know that people give you show notes and it's just a link to what's really, it's almost like a blog post with the info, a summary of what was talked about in the podcast, and then whatever links were shared, or like you said, tutorials, that's all in the notes. So for me, it's just sending them to my website with a slash and an episode number. So michellerayburn.com/4 was the one I just produced.
Mm-hmm.
So really, it's a way of bringing everything together. And you could probably absolutely do that with Marketers on a Mission.
So now you got me thinking now. I had overcome several objections, but I couldn't get over that last hurdle for some reason. Smallest thing to consider, and it was keeping me from moving forward.
Right. When you have the video, I just open it in QuickTime on my computer and save it as audio only. And then I did produce an intro and an outro so that, you know, when you're logging into the podcast, you actually hear something that lets you know, hey, I'm on the podcast that I've been listening to regularly. And then some closing, that same thing you're doing on Marketers on a Mission. So I think you could do that. One of the things that I had to decide then was whether I was going to do audio, video, both, and how it was going to work in with the blog. And then I also had to decide on whether I had the technical skill to do it. Because for me, it's all DIY. I'm a do-it-yourself person, and mostly it's because I'm in rural Wisconsin and I have to either find virtual people to do that kind of thing for me, or I have to do it myself because I don't live near anybody in my little town of 500 people who's producing video regularly or audio regularly. So that is a big decision, and I think for some people that's overwhelming, but there are resources out there if you are not a do-it-yourself person.
Okay. So help us with the very first question is, what is my goal? How do we choose that? You mentioned it. Give us some suggestions, please, or just flesh that out for us, please.
Right. So because I'm already a writer, I knew that my goal was to connect with my audience without having to leave my house. So it was an expansion on the speaking events that I'm doing already, and just knowing that I could reach people who are out there on social media who might not be attending an event. So for me, that was the goal. For some people might be building their brand and just saying, okay, I need to expand. I have content to give, and this is a way of doing it. Some it's for entertaining, because it's just, you know, there's some podcasts I listen to that are just good for a laugh. Some are actually making money with their podcasts. So it's an extension of like some webinars or something else that they're already doing. And then it also helps you to increase authority. And so maybe it's just getting out there and putting content and having people be able to listen to you and get familiar with you and know that you are an authority on a subject.
Do you have any ideas on how we could tell, this is a very subjective question, how could we tell that we're not just going to try one more thing and be squeezed so tightly, so spread so thinly that the whole house of cards is going to come down? How can we protect against that, Michelle?
I think you have to ask that question. If you're already at the breaking point and you feel like you're doing so much and you can't add one more thing, then that answers the question. But for somebody who's just getting started, maybe they're already blogging and they have some extra time and they figure, you know, maybe I could reach a few more people, then that's an open door to explore it. But yeah, it's overwhelming if you're already doing a lot of things. The only other thing I would consider with that is, are you doing a lot of things and in multiple avenues that could be combined under one umbrella, and maybe it would simplify it all? For me, if I'm already going to write a blog post, I might as well write the blog post with an audio broadcast in mind. So it doesn't add another step as far as that goes. It's the technical part that adds the other step.
Yes. So if you're hearing this and even the word podcasting is sort of making your brain ooze out your ears, it doesn't have to be that way. It just doesn't have to be that way. Systems are what saves us, aren't they, Michelle?
Right. And I wrote up a system, and I've been tweaking it a little bit as I do it each episode, but now I have it down where I know I need to record, and then I know what I want to write each time I put one up on SoundCloud so that the feed goes out there. And I know the format that I'm using for titling them, all of that. And so I'm just going through a checklist each time I do one. And so it is getting faster each time I do an episode.
Mm-hmm. So give yourself a break. Give yourself, 2 weeks or 2 months to get into a system, to get into a routine. You discover what you like. And it will morph as the months go by. But every single day that you sit down is not going to be from starting from scratch. That's too much to ask of anybody.
Right. Yeah, I worked on it for quite a while before I actually recorded an episode. Really thinking through, like, does this fit with what I want to do? Is it going to be just one more thing? Am I motivated by wanting to reach my audience versus trying to become famous? Mm-hmm. Do I have expectations for how many followers I'll have? I asked a lot of questions of myself before I did any recording of anything.
Mm-hmm. And that came from all your years of experience, right?
I ask questions about everything.
I mean, that's your nature.
Yeah, it is my nature. Every time I'm going to do something, if someone asks me to do something, my first question is why? Why do I want to do this?
Okay. So what's my goal? The next is, what will be the value-added content for my audience? And explain for us, if you would, what value-added means. I know, but will you tell us?
Yeah, well, my perception of value added is that it has some sort of a takeaway or something that makes the audience care. So sometimes it is just entertainment or humor. And for the mom who is busy with her kids, and that's really who I'm targeting with a lot of my content, is maybe she just needs that moment to unwind. So that's value for her. But for you, with Marketers on a Mission, people want writing-related content or marketing-related content. So that's the value that they're looking for. And I need to stick to that. If that's the value I'm offering, I don't want to waver all over the place and keep offering something different so they don't know what to expect.
Yeah. And that is a marketing principle across the board, no matter what format, no matter what platform, whether it's a blog or a book or anything else, right?
Yep. Your brand is really important.
Excuse me. Then we go to, who's your focus or niche? And you sort of already just alluded to that when you mentioned it just now. We haven't even said the name of the podcast. The name of the podcast is?
Life Repurposed.
And that goes right along with your book.
It does. Yep, the Repurposed and Upcycled Life. Yep. And so it goes along with that. And then I have kind of a blog zine, I call it, because my blogs have 3 areas of content. It's like a little mini magazine each time an issue comes out, where I talk about a practical everyday thing. Then I talk about something related to repurposing in some way, because that's really part of my brand. And then I share a resource or a book that I think my audience might be interested in that's personally affected me in some way. So I write about those in the blog, and then in the podcast I talk about those things.
If you haven't heard of Michelle or don't yet understand the full weight of her expertise, Michelle Rayburn, you need to follow her. Consider following her in any format, every format. She's got it going on, and she teaches other people how to get it going on. So I'm a big Michelle Rayburn fan.
Oh, thank you.
Now, you mentioned just a minute ago about the format, so we'll go past that. That's the interview or the narrative and so forth. So we've covered that. Consistency we've covered. Oh, here's a big one. I love this topic because the answers to these questions, the questions themselves, and then the answers to these questions are applicable across the board. If you're building your audience, if you're building your brand on a social media, if you're deciding about whether you should or should not have a blog, a podcast, fill in the blank. These basic questions are basic marketing questions. So don't be intimidated by them. They fit in every area. For example, how often will I release? You've got to decide how often you're going to submit a new podcast, and it's the same question for a blog post and other things. So help us understand that with podcasting, please.
Right. So you really have to understand your audience, because if they are somebody who you think has the time to listen once a week and you have the energy to release something once a week, that's kind of the typical for podcasts. I'm doing 2 a month because I know it might actually take my audience a little bit of time to catch up. on an episode. I don't know that the busy person has enough time to listen as often as, weekly. Maybe they do. I don't personally have the ability to produce one weekly right now. I don't have that in my schedule. So that it really ties together. But I don't know if there's any daily, there are some daily podcasts out there. They're like 5-minute ones, like a 5-minute marketing update. There are things like that. But I'm doing ones that are 15 minutes or longer. And there are quite a few podcasts that are 45 minutes out there. 45 minutes once a week, that's a pretty big production. So it's about how often you would also release a blog post. So it really depends on your audience too.
And then, okay, here's a fantastic one. How will this podcast integrate with my YouTube channel and blog?
Right. So it's like I mentioned a little bit there where it's like, is this going to be standalone content or will I be able to work it into what I'm already doing? My preference is work it into what I'm already doing because it's part of my brand. And also it's just, that's so much disconnected, disjointed stuff out there. So for me, that's how it needs to be.
And it's good for people to be able to see you. Here you're on social media. Next thing you know, you're on a podcast. Next thing, there's a blog post that you're sharing, and similar or the exact same content. And the points of contact that builds our momentum as an authority, doesn't it?
Right. And actually, there's the preference that people have. Some people want to find you on social media. Some people want to only see you on Instagram. Some people will follow you only on a YouTube channel or only on the podcast. And so this way, whatever their preference is, they're getting the content.
Yes. But you're still doing almost the same amount of work, but you're going out at 4 different ways. There's groups of people in each environment who might be interested in you. And if you only go to one environment, you'll never know who the other 3 groups are.
Yep, exactly.
But you're already doing the work.
Right. Might as well then and then, having it out on those platforms allows more search engine optimization and all that kind of thing too.
Yes. So all of this is on my plate that we're talking about to get the most marketing buck for my effort as I progress, because I'm a one-man show. Michelle is a one-man show, but she sings and dances and plays the ukulele. I'm not as far advanced.
I don't play the ukulele. I don't dance either. I'm terrible.
Well, you wear more hats than I do, because everybody has to build and wear the number of hats that God is currently giving them to carry, right? To wear.
Right, absolutely. I love variety, so.
Tammy Whitehurst is here. Hello, Miss Tammy. Now, Tammy knows about podcasting because she is a definite podcaster. Okay, so basic steps to launch the podcast. We've already planned it out. We know who our audience is. We know how often we're going to post, what kind of content to keep our brand consistent. Where are we now? Decide if you want to do, and you sort of alluded that. You want to swing back on that, video, audio, or
I think let's go to like what we need for hardware, software, that kind of thing, because we've decided on it. Now it's my next step. I'm actually using things that I already have. My computer, my iPhone. I know the Android phones have really good audio capabilities. I plug a microphone into my phone and record it as a video. And then that way I can have both. But I know people who use like GarageBand or some platform that's on their phone or their computer already, and they record their audio that way. So really, I didn't go out and buy a whole bunch of special equipment. I did buy, in order to do some videos, I bought some studio lighting that was really reasonably priced. It's not fancy. It's not the top of the line at all. But that was just something I needed in order to do the video portion. But for audio, I'm editing everything in the video program, and I'm using Adobe software because I already had it. But there are all kinds of free audio editing and video editing software pieces out there that you can get.
I find that there's 2 camps: people who are overwhelmed at the concept, and other people who are trying it and feeling like they have to have a TV production quality studio.
Right.
Before you've even recorded one thing, you don't even know if you like it. There's so many variables. Give yourself a break, and it's complicated, but it's not too hard for you to do. Break it down into step by step and go on the cheap.
Yep. There are some podcasters out there that I've listened to that have talked about how to produce a podcast, and they've talked about having top, like radio microphone and all that kind of stuff. That will come down the road for me after I test the waters a little bit. Some people have the funds to go ahead and invest right away, and why not get a fun microphone and a mixer and all that kind of stuff. But for me, just starting with what I had, and actually some of the most popular podcasts that I've listened to sound like they're recording it in a tin can. It's like, I don't know, they got thousands and thousands of subscribers and they clearly do not have any quality audio. Maybe they're doing it in their car while they're riding. I don't know. But that's the point, is that they don't have the expensive equipment and yet their message is getting out there. Yes. So to just be aware of using what you have to at least get started. I don't want it to sound like garbage, but there's a happy medium in there.
At 8 years, 6 years, even 4 or 5 years ago, you had to have this top quality equipment, but that technology has just risen above what anybody could even imagine 20 years ago could possibly be. We don't need that right now.
Right. And the ability on your phone, when you plug in a cheap little lapel microphone, it actually, if you're going to do anything outside, that cuts out some of the wind noise that you would get. And it's amazing what you can do with just a phone and a little microphone. So you could do a lot.
Excuse me. And if your audience knows that you're putting your best foot forward, they're sympathetic. They're in your camp. They want you to succeed because they want you to help them, right?
Right. Yep. Yeah. They care about the content more than they do about the little pops the first couple of videos I put out, I watched them back later. I had a poppy seed in my teeth on one. I heard something slam when my husband did something on one. The last time I recorded a video, I watched it later and saw a ladybug crawl across the wall behind me. And it's like, it just is what it is. I want to be real too.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. So we've talked about microphone, mixer, computer, software. Decide on a branded name. This is a big one because I would want mine to carry over. But if you're not in as you go to different platforms, your brand name may not be available in that platform.
Right. I did research that. And the other thing was I didn't want it to be the name of my book because I have other books in mind that connect to it, but are, so I chose Life Repurposed because I'm using that on Instagram as well. And when I looked, there weren't a lot of people using the terms in that title. And it fit with my brand. So the other thing is fancy names don't tell people what you do. So sometimes just the simple, like I listened to Amy Porterfield, the Online Marketing Made Easy podcast. That one's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like branding it with something that is really obvious about what the content's about. So when people are searching, they can find it.
Janet McHenry's here. Hello, Janet. Tammy, Janet, Janelle. Janet asks, do you use music in your intro and outro clips?
I do use music, and I have made sure it's copyrighted. So I purchased the music for the intro and the outro, and then I do have some music playing softly in the background, so if someone's out walking while they're listening, they have a little bit of a beat to go with it. That is from Creative Commons, and you have to mention it in the licensing, but I've made sure I did not use any audio that was copyrighted or without permission.
And that information is all available on their website. Each particular audio or video clip gives all that information. And
right.
Go ahead.
It tells you how many times you can use it, or whether it can be used for commercial use, whether it can be used in content you sell, or whether it's only for content you give away. So yeah, you have to read the licensing.
And if you have any trouble, they're excellent to help you. So just give them a call and give customer service a call. Okay, this is also a biggie. Create a graphic to use for a thumbnail on the web. But your graphics are great.
Thank you.
Excuse me just a second. Okay, I'm sorry for the interruption. It may happen again. It's not supposed to, but it may.
We have friends, podcasters. Yeah, so the graphic needs to be square because it's going to be going on those platforms out there. Like iTunes and Google Play have square thumbnails. So you need to make sure that it's for that. And then iTunes that would be recognizable, so that if people are scrolling through, they're going to see that same one every time. Sometimes people for a podcast use a different graphic for each episode, but when I'm scrolling through podcasts on my phone and looking for one to listen to, I really am looking for that graphic that I recognize. So I use the same one for every episode.
Yeah. Let's see. Next we go to choose the platform where you're going to host it. How can we make the best decision on that? There's so many variables. Well, how do we know what to do, Michelle?
I did a lot of research, and I looked at some social media posts where people said, where do you host it? And I looked at what they were recommending. I'm going to be having to pay for my platform really soon. I have mine on SoundCloud, and you can have a couple of hours of content, and then you need to upgrade. But I thought I would test it out and see if I loved the platform before I went ahead and subscribed. Really, it depends on how long your episodes are, because if you have a 5-minute podcast, you're not going to fill up your free space as fast as if you have a 45-minute podcast. So most of them give you an hour or 2 or 3 that you can try it out. And then I looked at how much it was going to cost me per month, because I didn't want to spend a ton of money on putting a content out there for free. So I don't want to pay a lot. But I also want to make sure that I can have it go to iTunes and Google Play and the other places too. So I ended up with SoundCloud, but there's Libsyn. There's quite a few of them. If you just Google hosting your podcast RSS, which is real simple syndication, or rich site summary, depending on which camp you're in. But essentially what happens is you just need to have it in a place where then places like iTunes or Google Play can pull it. Every time you put up an episode, it automatically knows you put one up. And so that's all. You need a place to put it.
Okay. Thank you very much. Sharon Tedford's joined us. She asks, what are your thoughts on having a different voice introducing you? Do you think that's necessary or not necessary?
Actually, there's 2 camps of thought on that, because some people think it sounds really professional to have someone else, like you're coming out on stage. But I'm seeing a trend where more people are shifting over to introducing themselves, because your listeners want to hear you, and they don't need to have, like an announcer, like the "here's Johnny" kind of a thing. I do my own, and I've seen some people who used to do it the other way now starting to shift over to saying, "I'm your host, so-and-so."
Okay. And really, there's not a wrong answer, is there?
There isn't. No, some people want it that way. There's probably some really good reasons for why you would want somebody else to do your intro.
Let's see. Or you've got create intro and outro. We're just going down a list of yours that Michelle has already sent to me. We wanted to be sequential and give you the information and not forget anything. We've already talked about the intro and the outro. Didn't we thoroughly cover that, or do you want to mention?
And the other thing with the intro and the outro is I created a graphic for that too, which is a different shape than the thumbnail for the podcast, because it's horizontal for the screen. And so I did create that animated graphic that comes in on mine and has the title. That's an optional thing. Some podcasts because the graphic that I made was because I'm also doing a YouTube channel. So it has both the graphic and the audio. If you're not messing with YouTube as well, then you can skip that whole step. It doesn't matter. And then I have saved that intro. I saved the audio of it and the music of it so that when I'm editing, I just paste that in. So I do not do it from scratch each time, but you could read the same thing every time if you wanted to.
Yeah. The outro is part of your standard outro, inviting people to subscribe.
I'm trying to remember. I think I have that on there. If it's not on the outro, I say it at the end of the portion that I'm recording each time, because I'm telling them the link where they can go and get the show notes. And show notes, like I said, is just a term for the content, the printable or viewable text that goes along with the podcast.
One of my challenges has been how to add producing regular blog posts on top of everything else on my to-do list. And then, of course, the epiphany hit. Finally, the Lord got through with his little hammer, like, Patricia. My shows, my programs are my blog posts.
They are.
Duh.
Yeah.
I was making it much more difficult. And I knew that cosmically, but it wasn't inside there.
Yeah. Right.
One piece of content, put it on multiple platforms. Within reason, go slow, build yourself up, get comfortable. It might not work on Instagram, but you may find your audience is thronging to you. So give yourself permission to test and test the waters, test yourself, create systems, all kinds of things. It's a give and take.
One of the things that a lot of podcasters do that I do not is put out an audio transcript that's not only the show notes with a summary, but they do an actual transcript.
Yeah.
I don't do that. That would mean me hiring somebody to sit and listen and transcribe it. And I don't do that, but some do, which is fabulous because you can go on and read the whole thing if there was something you missed and you're trying to figure out what that was. So just want to put that out there.
I would like to do that. I don't have the time to do it myself. Even though I'd love to hear it again because I enjoy everything that everybody's telling me. You know, my guests are so knowledgeable and wonderful. But at the same time, if I don't do it myself, I take that on me because you've got to be consistent. You're going to do it or you're not going to do it.
Right.
But the transcription services are $1 a minute for 45 minutes every day, 5 days a week, 52 weeks a year. I can't do it, baby.
Right, exactly. So I want to do what I can and then not promise something and start with the Cadillac and then have to scale back to the Volkswagen. It's like,
I agree.
You know, I want to start with the budget version of it and then add in as I can. And I love Volkswagens too, by the way.
I like that analogy. It's very fitting, and it's basic marketing. Going back again, it's basic marketing. Test the waters, do your best. Know that you're not in the Cadillac region yet, but you could get there. But
Right.
Don't overwhelm yourself. Just start with, walking the track, whatever it is that's your speed, your budget, whatever that is it would work out.
Right, exactly.
We've covered the music, graphics, producing your content. This is a big one because you're very time conservative. You're very efficient. You create systems designed for efficiency and to be exactly what you want at the same time. You don't give up one for the other. So how do you batch?
So I will record more than one episode at a time because for me, if I'm doing the video and the audio together, it means setting up studio lights and getting my camera just so. And so I've been doing 2 at a time because I'm only doing 2 a month. But if I was doing them weekly, I probably would do all 4 at a time if I could, just because then you can get everything all gathered together. Like one day work on writing the content, another time work on recording, and another afternoon of editing. Otherwise, it's always hanging over your head of like, oh, I've got to get that done. It's time for a new episode. So I do it that way, and then it helps me I'm starting to think out content. Like at first I was kind of winging it. And now I'm at the point where I'm thinking, okay, I need to plan out 2019. What are some of the things I'm going to cover and start writing content ahead of time?
We get our feet under us as we go, don't we?
Right.
Not before we start.
Well, no, because I knew if I didn't launch it, like I had a goal of launching it in September, and I knew if I waited for the planets to align and everything to be perfect, it was never going to happen. And so I just said, I'm putting it out there. And in fact, after we did our last interview, I had my lights all set up and I said, okay, I'm going to go for it and record the first episode. So we hung up our call and I recorded the first episode and got it done.
That's fun. That's
fun.
I
figured I was already all dressed up and wearing makeup. So, and if you're only going to do podcasts, you don't have to worry about the makeup. That's the wonderful thing.
Now, did you have anything else about iTunes, Google, Spotify? That's a one-time isolated task. You do it, you're connected, and then you're finished.
So I had to submit it to iTunes and wait 24 hours or so, and then they approved it. And then now every time I put up an episode on SoundCloud, it goes out there. And the same thing with Google Play. I submitted it, waited for approval. There's other ones out there. I just haven't gotten around to submitting it to those. But really then when I'm uploading an episode, I'm not having to upload it on all these platforms every time. It's just uploading it in one place and the feed is going out there.
We'll go back and explain that just a hair more, because what I want people to know is once they're connected to Google, Spotify, iTunes, and so forth, the YouTube, that my thought just, it's not something you have to do more than one time. And you just said something brilliant. Of course, now I can't remember what you said.
Oh, let's see.
I apologize.
That's okay. I was talking about uploading it to SoundCloud.
I think you made the point in that.
Or uploading those things once and getting them approved. And then each episode goes to SoundCloud. I don't know if that rang a bell.
Yes, yes. So YouTube and Spotify and Libsyn and whoever else you're connected to, Instagram, whatever your platforms are, it's the same thing that you could go on Facebook and you can, it's not the same, I might be messing myself up here. In a regular social media post on Facebook, if you're connected to Twitter, you take one action and it goes in both places.
You can, yes. With the podcast, I don't do that because actually, like when you're automating your posts, let's say you're using something like Hootsuite or Buffer or something like that to put your posts out there. I want to have the hashtags I use, and that's like another whole discussion, but I want to have everything suitable for that platform. And so even tagging somebody, if their username isn't the same and you've interviewed a guest and you want to tag them and let people know you interviewed them and here's the podcast, you're going to want to manually tag them in Facebook and in Twitter and in Instagram because their username might be different. You can't just put @ in their name. So I do manually go out there and share the content after the podcast. I do not have it automatically going to social media. I could, but I don't.
Okay. How long does it take you? And now you've done it 2 months. That's 8 weeks, which is 4 podcasts. Is that right?
Yeah.
4 podcasts. You just wrapped up number 4.
Yes.
So have you done it long enough to have a general idea? Because you're still batching, and that's in the equation. Can you just give us a ballpark? How much time does it take you from the beginning to the end?
I'm tracking my time using software right now, and I didn't look to see what the last one took me. It's a couple of hours per episode when I consider recording, editing, loading it out there. So it is definitely, I want to say 3 or 4 hours per episode right now, and that's with my efficient process. I don't know that it's going to get much faster than that.
Do you think that you'll be live, or that you're going to stay with recorded versions?
I'm going to stay with recording because I can put it all out at the same time. If I do live, then I have to go back in and edit the blog post to add in the video and produce it after I've done the live, where I'm producing it before. So, yeah, it's just my preference.
But it does allow you to streamline it just a little bit more, doesn't it, to do the recording?
Right. It's ready to go when I hit send. It goes out there, and then I let go. Like I save the blog post, and it's in there and done.
Doesn't it feel good?
Yeah. And then I'm on to the next one already. And like I said, I'm new to this. So for me, it's like still developing the process of where I'm going with it. Maybe it will be a weekly thing someday. We'll see.
One of the things that I love so much about doing this program is that we get to hear people who are actually doing these things. And we're not just looking at them from a distance and seeing perfection. People like you are coming on and saying, this is the process, this is the steps, I learned this, I want to watch out for this, I would have done this differently. We don't get that when we're hearing someone else's perfect delivery. And there's no negative for their perfect delivery, but we feel that we need to go from where we are to where they are, and that we don't give ourselves grace for learning.
A lot of them have a team. I don't have a team, so I have to remember that.
Same here. Janet says, excellent episode. So glad you were here. And, we always appreciate you being here. Janet has a question I'm going to ask in just a moment. But first, Janelle had one. What kind of equipment do you have to purchase before you start a podcast? What kind of investment did you have to make when you started? And we talked about that already just a little bit, Janelle. But can you give us a little bit, look back to that?
Yeah, really, it was a lapel microphone for about $30 and my phone, because my phone audio is good enough for right now. Down the road, maybe I'll get a $100 microphone, but not now.
So don't feel like you have to do that, Janelle. It's not. You can be so effective and reach other people for Christ without spending every penny you ever had or ever will have. Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. You can definitely do it. With your level of knowledge, Janelle, you can get on there and do that very easily. Janet says you also have to make a podcast logo in a square shape. You've mentioned that, didn't you?
Yeah.
I did that and actually had an initial test podcast, but then made the decision that I did not have enough time to carry it off on a consistent basis. And I appreciate you saying that, because we just need to get in there and tell it, don't we?
Yeah, if we don't have the time, we have to be honest and say, I can't do this right now, and be okay with that.
And it goes even further. If you haven't got the time, then the Lord is either satisfied with what you're currently doing, you being anyone, or he wants you to give up something so that you can do the new thing.
Right.
And I have just the manufacturer time.
Yeah, I work from home, but I work full time as a freelancer. And yes, this is part of my work hours, but I actually have enough work every day, all week long, that this is something I'm doing in the evenings. And so I'm actually giving up some TV to do this.
There you go. Now, your children also are grown. One just got married.
Got married. One was already married. So yes, I'm an empty nester, and that does change things a lot. I can't even imagine doing this when my kids were at home and I was a stay-at-home mom and all that. I mean, there are people who do it, but I can't imagine myself doing it.
Yeah, I'm in the same camp as that as well. It doesn't seem like it's going to be really that much difference because it's enormous, enormous difference, enormous. This last I have, but my type that I've printed it out is really small. So we have 6 steps. Number 1 is write the content. This is the steps to produce each podcast, and we're just going to go down those for you.
Yeah. It's a real good summary, a real quick one. Writing the content, recording the content, edit and adding in the intro and the outro, writing the episode description and the show notes, uploading it to the hosting platform, and then linking to where people can find it. So when I upload it to the platform, making sure that it has my website and the / and the episode number where they can find it at michellerayburn.com, because otherwise it's just too hard for them to figure out where to find the show notes.
Yes.
So that sounds so simple when you put it in 6 steps. That's it. Snap your fingers and you have it.
It's like raising a baby. Well, you just go to the hospital. Step number 1 is you go to the hospital and you have the baby. And step number 2 is they've graduated and you help them get married. There's a lot of
that's how it works, isn't it?
A few things in between there. Do you have any other questions or comments? Now is the time. We've got a few minutes that we could play with here. If you have another question or comment, we would love to be able to be live and respond. What are you Katie Androsky is here. She says, what kind of software?
Okay, so for me, I'm using Adobe software because I already have the subscription, but there are free things like, I think Audible is one that people use. And like I said, some people use GarageBand because it comes with their Mac computer. The Windows-based computers also have some audio editing built in. And again, I'm not trying to get to this level of the whole equalizer thing. You know, I like playing with that, but I don't. I get to a point where I'm like, this is good enough. There's no squeaks and pops, and that's good enough. So.
We're not shooting for perfection, and we're really careful. We want professionalism, though, that we don't have to choose.
Right. Yeah.
Let's see if we have any other questions before we move on.
Oh, the other thing I was going to say, that if you are somebody who doesn't know how to do the audio portion on your phone or can't find an audio recorder, if you record a high quality video and just upload it to a computer, I can, with QuickTime, open the video and I can save just the audio portion of it as an MP3. So it doesn't matter what the video looks like if I'm never going to produce it as a video, but it's one way of getting the audio if you're not sure if there's another way. And so that's actually how I've done some of the audio, like the intro and the outro, just record it as a video. That way it sounds the same all the way through because I'm recording it on one. If I did some on the computer and some on my phone, it wouldn't sound like the same audio.
I agree. That's an excellent point. That's a great point. I'm trying to check my Facebook page, but I'm on someone else's computer.
I'm just going to see if there's any comments there. I guess I have to refresh.
Okay. That was my problem. I refreshed and it went a little bit haywire there. Oh yeah, we're good. Okay. Let's see over here again. Judy, hello, Judy Gordon-Morrow. Just now gone on and look forward to watching the replay. You'll enjoy it. It's very informative. It's a great, you gave us not just an overview, but then the steps to consider and really the strategies, not so much the tactics, even though a lot of them were included. If we don't get the strategy right, the tactics aren't really going to carry the day, are they?
Right. And the techie side of it could be different for everybody depending on what platform you're using. Maybe you're hiring somebody to do that, or your kids are helping you with it. So that would be the side of it. but just to be able to understand the process.
It's like everything else. And let's make another point again. When I first got online, and then years later got online and started marketing, every single thing that I did had a learning curve.
It does.
And multiple steps.
Right.
It seemed like I was never, when is it going to be automatic or not such a bear every day just to do one? At the end of the day, you've got one thing done. You got to give yourself grace. Know that Christ is giving you grace. It doesn't expect you to go into a completely new environment with tools you've never used, people needs and questions that you've never asked before, no resources available. There are now, but at the time, I'm hunting and pecking was the best you could do. And if you couldn't do it by yourself, you just couldn't do it. That was before Facebook. That was before Facebook groups. If you didn't have the money to hire a professional, and then how would you know which professional to hire? In the old days, you had to be really committed. Really committed.
Well, now there are some really great blog posts out there from other people who have done it that, if you search on the internet for how to start a podcast or should I start a podcast, you will find all kinds of articles out there. And that was part of my initial research, was just reading, how do I do this?
And you're a great researcher, and most of us are. And if you're not, you need to freshen those skills up because you're going to need them. If not for a podcast, for something else. That's just the way it is now.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you also that on iTunes and Google Play and some of those platforms where you find podcasts, there are whole help sections for people who are thinking about hosting one, on how to get it on there, some tips on how to format it, all that kind of stuff. So I also read those.
I'm glad you said that because I completely forgot about it. So before you even get on and you've got your, your very miraculous first video and you need to do something with it, and you go and try to install it or upload it and you find out it's the wrong size or somehow it's wrong, go do that research before you start recording.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be 3 months. Just go and listen, get a feel for it. Everything has a learning curve. You can do it if the Lord wants to. If He called you to do it, you can do it.
Yeah, that's right.
Let me check one more time and we will close out if we don't have any other questions or comments. Do you have any other words of wisdom? Because if you've got something fresh on your mind, we want to get it.
I think my biggest thing for people who, if you've thought about doing a podcast and it's on your mind, to consider it and to take that leap and believe that you can do it, because you don't have to be somebody with a huge following to launch that podcast to reach your audience. And so I'm here to say you can do it. And I think that courage is one of the biggest things that goes along with it, is just putting it out there and being vulnerable and letting people hear it and critique it and all the stuff that comes along with, just like writing a book, really. You're putting yourself out there.
Yes. Now, years ago, everybody suggested that you had like 10 shows as an archive. So when somebody, the very first time they came to your podcast, then they would have access to an archive of no less than 10 shows. But you're finding that that's not necessary for you and your following. Is that right?
Well, that would involve me producing a lot of content and not putting it out there. And so I figure it's in a timely way. I'm letting people now discover it. And the people who come along in 4 months from now will have that. So it's just some people get to be on the first floor of the elevator as it heads up.
Oh, love that. Love that. We have one more comment. Carol Jackson's here. Hey, Carol. She says, I appreciate the information. I will review again later. I tend to listen to these videos while I'm doing menial or sometimes admin tasks, but not balancing your checkbook, Carol.
Hey, that's exactly what we do with podcasts. We listen to them while we're doing other tasks.
Yes, that's the whole idea. The whole idea. Thank you so much for joining me. You know so much. I hope you can come back and join us another time.
Thank you.
Just throwing it out there. As you get more and more things going, you may have less and less time, but you're so efficient. You're so efficient. Maybe you'll have time to join us again.
I'd love to.
Thank you, viewers, for being here. You know we're here exclusively for you. If you weren't here, wouldn't be any reason for us to be here. So we're really glad that you're here. This has been Marketers on a Mission, episode number 177. Could 2019 be the year you launch your podcast with Michelle Rayburn? Tomorrow, Tammy Whitehurst is going to join me. Now, she joined me 2 weeks ago when we were talking about the upcoming conference, Christian Communicators Conference. that's going to be in 2019. So she was talking to us then about the conference. Tomorrow she's coming and we're going to talk about her being a motivational speaker, and she's going to help us learn how to jumpstart our speaking careers. 2 or 3 steps there to do. Sharon says, thanks so much. You're very welcome, Sharon. Always, always. Thanks for being here. We'll see you tomorrow. We appreciate you again. Bye-bye, Michelle.